And please use the ASN.
Good evening. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, all requirements have been satisfied. Meeting dates for the year confirmed at the annual meeting are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby in the Municipal Center and published in the record within the first 10 days of the new year. Copies of all revised and additional meeting notices are sent via fax to the records of River Night and Northern Valley Press and are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center. Just for the record, for the public that's here, this is a combined meeting. We have a work session followed by a public meeting. The public has the opportunity to speak at the public meeting. I also would like to say primarily to the people at this table that having watched a couple of recent meetings, I'm going to make an effort to try and keep the crosstalk down, because if there's a conversation going on at the other end of the table, it just doesn't, we're wasting time because not everybody's on the same wavelength. That's the one takeaway. The other takeaway is when somebody, Lauren, you're in the hot seat. I give you the signal. I want you to grab Dan's pen, right? Because the camera over there focuses here, and all you can see is this pen being twirled. I try to tell him. So I'll give you the sign, and you just hit the pen. Okay. The first item we have on the agenda is the Tenafly Swim Club Ecological Due Diligence Report review with the Borough Engineer. And we have our Borough Engineer, Andy Hippolyte here. So, Andy?
So I think in your packages you have a report from us. The top layer is dated January 12th. If I direct you to the last page, that's probably the best thing to discuss, which would be the last page report. There's actually a diagram in it, a little map, an aerial map, like such. In that aerial map, if you look at it, it identifies the Tenafly Brook, which is a regulated waterway. The red boundary on the map is the property limits, about where the property limits fall. Then you can see on that, kind of in the middle of the building, and you can see an area that's shaded and dotted, some crosshatch areas. In general, the property is pretty much environmentally restricted. So you either have floodway, flood hazard area, or wetlands area in the property. The floodway is the hatched areas. The flood hazard areas are the dotted areas. The wetland areas are the inside the yellow areas. The only area not constrained environmentally is right in the front by Grove Street. There's an area which has nothing in it. That area in the front is not constrained. In a quick nutshell for you, the property, because it's so environmentally constrained, anything you want to do on there is going to require DEP permits, both from flood hazard and wetlands, and there'll be individual permits, so they don't fall into any general permits. So those permits are time-consuming, costly, and not guaranteed. We would tell you that if you were going to do anything there with a building, you should not take your building down. You should keep that building and modify it in place. If you're going to remove the building, you'll probably lose the right to put it back up. If you put it back up, you'd have to meet the new regulations and meet the new flood elevations and elevate the building and go through a whole process for that. The Tenafly Brook is a zero net fill, so you can't provide any net fill there. Once you take it down, you lose the right to have that fill that's there. So it's very environmentally constrained, both from flood hazard and from wetlands. I would warn you and be very careful. Anything you do that removes the building, because once you remove it, you lose the right to have it there.
So can we ask a few questions?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, Andy. From reading your over here, basically it says that 80% of this area can practically not be touched.
Agreed.
In a way. And only like the 20% to the front of the property or to the east, there is a chance, but that's going to be also very much the question, right?
Well, no, you can touch this. So the front part of the map, if you turn the map, this front part is totally unconstrained by DEP, right? You can do anything you want there. Yeah, it's unconstrained property.
So the question for me is, if we want to do a park, can we build a park in the areas that are shown as a flooded, or in the area that's yellow, or is it green space?
So the yellow areas are wetlands or wetland buffer areas. So the ability to disturb them at all is probably no. The areas that are outside the yellow areas are either floodway or flood hazard area, and you can build in those areas. A park would be a great use for that, but you still need permits.
Well, when you use the term disturb,
Disturb is anything. It's either dig a grass out or take pavement or knock the building down. It's disturb.
we were talking about removing the pool and filling that area in. Is that something we can do without too much of a problem?
You fall in the regulated area, you'll need a DEP permit for it.
Would that be expensive and difficult to get?
Just to fill a pool in? No. But
How-
to fill a pool in, knock the building down, or
I'm
leave
not
it.
talking about, the only thing I was asking you is filling in the pool.
The permit would probably be easy to obtain, 'cause it's just to take away nuisance.
Now, the next question I have is, Max talked about a park which may be a little bit more involved than what I'm asking about. That is, what if you want to make a field?
Anything where you restore it to grass, you probably have a high likelihood of getting the permit, but you'd still need a permit.
Okay, now, from yours, you have a technical knowledge we don't have. Is this area suitable for artificial turf?
Because it's an environmentally constrained area, I would say probably not, but that doesn't mean you couldn't get a permit for it. I could say we have gotten permits at Major for synthetic turf fields in flood hazard areas. One of the areas we did it in was in Lodi, and we had to glue it down. So we had to come in with a process to actually glue it, and it was a very expensive permit, a very costly permit, and it worked. It was a very costly process because if it's in a flood hazard area, it's going to be underwater at some point.
Well, that's,
So it'll wash away.
so the question I had, if we were going to do a grass field, would the lay of the land, combined with the potential for flooding, make that very,
Appealing to DEP, yes.
no, appealing to us? Are we gonna be able to maintain a field? I know
Yeah, I think you could, yes.
behind, on the other side of the Tenafly is the high school fields.
Yes, it is.
It's very swampy.
Yes, it is.
Okay, they have spent a good deal of money making those fields as good as they are, and they're not bad.
They're not bad.
When we did the municipal turf, didn't we have to do something at the end towards the Tenafly? Did we have to get a permit for that?
I was here when you did that.
I'm not sure.
So can I just follow? Yeah, so if we do a park with benches and grasses, and if we put some swings or so, because in that area we have, the locations of the swings or recreation areas, can they be in the quad area, or they have to be only in the lower part?
So from a park perspective, the dotted area, swings and benches, and maybe some walkways and grass areas are fine. You still will need a permit,
Yeah.
but the likelihood of getting it is likely.
It's-
The yellow areas, not so much. The yellow areas are areas that still need to be defined officially. The wetland limits need to be determined, then the buffer needs to be applied, and then you determine whether you can put something in there or not. Wetlands are much more restricted than the flood hazard area.
But grass would be a good alternative, if anything.
In the wetland areas, if it's not grass now, you can't put grass.
It is grass now.
Then you can put grass back.
Yes, okay, because it's grass now, all around, there is the pool, and there is
There's a
the...
significant amount of concrete. You've got the pool, which takes up a good part of that property.
Yeah.
Then you have the pool deck.
The pool house.
When you, there's, I don't know if you're referring to the equipment house?
Yes.
Well, that's separate. If we ever fill in the pool, that equipment house has got to come out. Because
Yes.
it's just,
There's
no reason to keep it. But I would hazard to guess that well over a third, if not a half of that property is, you know.
I would say probably about
Because
half.
that pool is very large.
Right, and
In the deck.
when you take concrete out, when you take buildings out, and you're in a flood hazard area, the DEP looks upon that favorably. Because once you take it out, you can't put it back.
Well, we'll even give them the old concrete if they want.
Is there any way within the yellow area to put in landscape and vegetation things that would reduce the flooding here? So that
Well, that's like a double-edged sword question. The reason I say that is, the DEP looks at flood hazard area as if they want to maintain full volume, both horizontally and vertically, so they don't want you to fill it with anything. So if you put 1 cubic foot of fill in the area between existing grade and the top water line, that's 1 foot more flood you can fall somewhere else. So you're in zero net fill area, zero net fill.
She was asking about vegetation.
vegetation, landscaping, things that will absorb the water, that will use the water.
So your short answer is yes, but again, the DEP highly regulates these areas. So you're going to submit down to them. It's an individual permit. It's not a permit that's granted by right, and they can give you it or they cannot. It's their choice. they have the ability to turn it down. I would say that vegetation will be looked at favorably, but you don't know when you get down to DEP. I've been down there where I've gotten one determination, and a week later I get a different one from somebody else. They're a tough group, and they have a new commissioner of DEP who is very, very environmentally conservative. Probably the most conservative person we've ever had down there.
On the other hand, this is as conservative a use as you.
I agree. Taking out, if you were to remove all the concrete and want to put vegetation back, I think it'd be a very good application.
What about if you already had, let's say, a swing set or something there, and you wanted to just fix it, replace parts of
You're
it?
repairing, anything repair at your property, you repair. So if you had a sidewalk, you fix it.
Because
You can't make it any bigger, you can't make any.
the neighborhood has a basketball court which is paved over, it has a whole swing set area which is partially paved over.
Maintenance is not.
So actually, that would give us some extra flexibility then.
As long as you understand.
I would think when the time is right,
Yeah.
we need to sit down and get a very, very basic first draft, and then run it by our engineers,
Yeah.
because they have the experience.
We have to decide within ourselves what we want to do, then create the first, okay.
All right.
Yeah, I would say probably one of the best people that have relationships with DEP are you. You did it with the seniors, the workforce out.
Yeah, but the person that we worked with was Cindy. She was terrific, because she advocated for localities.
She was terrific.
She's gone.
I didn't know she was gone.
But, hopefully her replacement will work out.
Yeah.
But she was very
fabulous.
good. All right, any other questions on the pool? Let's set, Max asked, he's got a couple of questions on the consent agenda that deal with the engineer. So if you don't mind, we're not going to vote on the consent agenda, but Max, take this opportunity to ask whatever questions you want to
Yes,
ask.
and that's going to be a little bit more of a tougher question, so be prepared. One of the
Tougher
things,
questions.
because I'm going to recommend that we
Thanks for the warning.
accept something like that. We have award Tenafly to award to AJ Contract. Now, AJM Contracting was the company that was supposed to do the streets in Tenafly and did not do the ceiling.
Correct.
So, we did not do the ceiling, and the quality, when I was asked, okay, it's going to be a quality, if they don't do it, we have to repeat it, and I was told no, because we can go to the co-op, and the co-op can do it cheaper. Only to find out that the co-op doesn't do the ceiling, and we're going to have to repeat. There was basically the vertical co-op.
No, it's a state co-op. It's not very your Riverside co-op doesn't do ceiling, but your state co-op does.
All right, and it's going to be, we're going to have to see the prices for the state co-op versus AJM contracting. And I'm very much, if there's going to be any costs that are going to be over the cost that we have had with AJM, and they didn't complete their obligation, they should basically, it's on their dime. Because if they did not complete an obligation, and it's going to cost the community more money, we should not pay for that. They should pay for the lack of fulfillment of the contract. So that's one of the things that we have.
Well, before you go any further, what I'm hearing is you want to combine the previous job with the proposed job.
No, it's not that.
Well, you believe that they shorted us, which they did,
Yes.
in the old job, and you want to have them compensate us on
There are two things that I would like to do.
The question is, well, that's the first thing, and I want, is that, can we do that? Is that legal?
So my thought was you already closed the first job out. Correct? You approved the change order, taking it out, job's over, you have no claim. Right, it's closed out, right?
But
That's not-
they didn't get paid in full, right?
No.
we.
So we can call the money back. And the
We already
question,
have the money.
I'm sorry?
We already have the money.
Yes, I'm saying we can hold the money that we did the last payment to make sure that there are no.
I think
You
just,
did a change order to reduce the amount that they.
right, did we even pay him out final? Did we pay her final
I'd
payment?
have to go look,
I
but
thought
I
we
think
paid
we
it.
reduced the
Yeah, we
amount that
reduced it.
we.
Yeah, we did, but.
Yeah, but they I just want to be a little bit careful, Bill, you could jump in. AJM didn't pull out of their contract. So AJM said, we can't seal the roads because the year got too late. We'll come back next summer, which is this summer, and do it. We looked at it and said, you know what, you missed the summer, the co-op prices are cheaper, we'd rather just use the co-op and get a more reliable contractor and have them do it. If you don't want to do that, that's your choice as a council. They didn't default on their contract.
Okay, that was different than what was presented to us.
I don't know what else about it.
Okay, it was basically that they did not complete the contract.
Well, they didn't complete at the time because they couldn't do it because of the weather.
Okay, at no time were I or anybody, I think, that were told that they have offered to complete the contract a year after.
No, that's not true. This is not the first time I've heard what he just said.
You might have heard it in a private
No,
conversation.
here, at this table, and Susan, I think you were here when we discussed that.
Well, I know I put a change order in, it was just that they didn't complete
Right.
the.
So we didn't pay them for it.
So we
Yeah, we
did
didn't
not
pay them.
pay
Yeah.
them.
How- We didn't pay them for it, we said, forget it, we don't want you to do it. We have the ability to now go in a different direction, and that's where we went.
You're gonna use a larger stake hall, which bids millions, I think, Wyatt says they build millions of square feet, so you get much cheaper than what
All
they
right,
do.
so here now comes the issue with this contract. AGM did not complete on time the contract before. They did not complete it on time.
Well, so they didn't default on their contract, they were still within their timeframes, but in their opinion, this is them, because of weather, they couldn't put the material down, so they didn't put it down. And the DOT specs, which we use, allow for extensions of time, so technically, and we didn't get there with the technical part, technically they would have been doing extension until next summer when the weather was fine. Now, would you go back after them and say, well, you could have done it last summer, the dollars to fight them, that would cost you more money I mean, you'd never win that, you'd never win it.
Yeah. And it was their recommendation that, because of the weather, it gotten to the
Well,
point
it was
where
just too cold and late.
it would not be, advisable to do it then.
But we did have the legal ability to cut them out, to close it out. And,
Well, everybody.
You would have had a suit, so you would have had a suit and say, you would have had a suit and say, we believe you're now defaulting,
Yes.
and you'd be incorporated, you'd never attend.
Max, when you guys hired AJM, and I'm asking this to
Yeah,
John,
here you go.
the council, Tony, maybe you remember as well, Dan, was there a reason we started the paving a certain part of the year, or was AJM's decision?
No, it was
It was their contract.
That
It
it
was
was,
their
they
decision.
were finishing on their part to start and not be able to finish if they knew the weather.
it's like,
It's no winter coming.
Lauren,
Yes.
it's like the plumber that you call up and you say, I'll be here Tuesday. And Tuesday comes in, he doesn't Tuesday. This guy, kept us hanging for how long? So we got really good.
They were doing the milling and paving road portion, and they didn't start their sealing portion. And again, the sealing portion is a very small component of a much bigger job. You as a council can take the action, you as a council have their contract. All I can tell you, based on I'm not your attorney, I've seen councils try to do that and they lose 100%.
Plus, hold it.
That is not what
Plus,
we want.
it benefited us because we were able to take that, the higher prices they would have been charging us for the same work,
Okay.
and got it cheaper through.
This is not, this is, we're getting it, I wanted to, so they're the one that basically did not finish the job. I'm very much against giving them another job after they basically did not finish the job last year. It doesn't matter if default or not, we don't have a
Bidding laws,
Bidding laws required us to do what we did.
Sorry?
The bidding laws required us, in this new job,
We can refuse all bids. We're allowed to refuse all bids
What's the reason?
every
It
year.
has to be if the cost came back above your budget.
Yes.
Right? Or that none of the bid submissions fell within the
Max,
specs.
if we were to refuse all bids at this
Yeah.
point, the parking lot wouldn't get done.
No, it will. I look at the schedule. Let's talk.
There's no way you're gonna get,
In trouble.
go through the process,
Yes.
set,
To reject bids, it has to be it's over budget or the scope of the project has changed. to always go to bid, you need to do a resolution rejecting bids
Yeah.
and hold another bid opening.
Yes.
You need at least 10 days of publication
Yeah.
to hold the bid opening.
Yes.
And then you have to receive the bids. If this is going to be done the first week of April, then the time to change it.
It's the first week of April.
Because that's spring break.
It's June. And then we
Uh,
get it.
The only thing we can do here,
The school gave you 1 week to do the job.
the only thing we can do here is be very vigilant as to making sure that this job gets done right.
Right, so we met with AJM a week ago, and it said to them, you need to complete the job, that's the 9 nights you have to do it. That means the job allows for 24-hour work, 7 days or 9 days in a row. The only reason they'd have for an extension is if they had rain. If they had days and days of rain, then all bets are off. They get an automatic extension until the next possible time. If June's the next possible time, then it would be June, whenever that next time falls.
There was no problem with the quality of their work, they just, just that time.
Let's go back. We have 2 windows to complete the work.
I've never, that's new, I've never heard that before. I don't know where that came from.
Okay, we have the April or the June before
Hey, where's the
the.
June window?
June isn't
Nobody
working.
is.
June
No,
isn't working because you have a swim club there.
if
We picked this time because the schools are out and there's no swim club. It's a week plus 2 weekends where the schools are closed.
We were told by the
This is
swim
the
club,
only-
yeah, we were told by the swim club in school that you have those 9 days to work once a year, every year. Other than that, it has to be open. That's what we were told. That's what we were told.
So if we were to put this out to bid again,
Yeah.
and we did the competitive contracting,
Yeah.
which allows you to reject the bids not based on other criteria than the lowest price. So even though the lowest price, if we didn't find the quality of work
Yeah.
was sufficient, or that they did subpar, they couldn't complete their contract requirements on time, or they were poor planners to get everything done, other criteria, if we were to
But we don't have.
I'm not done. If we were to do this, what is the earliest time we can get a bid?
A construction project doesn't fall under competitive contracting. Competitive contracting is for professional services. That's where you do an RFP and you're not stuck with the lowest bidder. It's all factors considered. Since it is a construction project, it has to follow the local public contracts law where you have to go out to bid. And if you're rejecting, you have to have specific reasons.
Which we don't in this case.
So if, just hypothetically, if we were to reject and put it out to bid,
Right.
what is the earliest we can do it?
Well, so if you rejected, I'll tell you, if you rejected bids tonight, the earliest you get it out to bid, you need, well, so if you're rejecting bids, you need a reason. So a reason would be making a change in the contract. So you make a time frame change. If you made a time frame change, let's say you did that, you could reject bids because you couldn't do it in the April deadline, you're worried about, if we want to work through this, you can worry about weather, rain, we say we're in April, maybe wet, so we want to take our time. That's a reason to reject. So you could reject it. I'm not saying AGM will take any court on it, because they're pretty sure they got their own attorneys that work for them, but just in case, so you know that. If you rejected bids tonight, you could be out to bid, you have to authorize it,
March 6th,
right, so you authorize a rebid March 6th.
published the 9th.
Published tonight, and then you could,
Raise bidder law.
you could,
We hold the bid opening March 21st, March 22nd.
right, you could award the 27th, you have a meeting 27th?
It depends if the review, how long the review process will take. Because it's
Well, you assume it would not be relative, I mean, we could do it quickly, so.
But for when?
Let's just talk
First of all, Lauren, Lauren, there is no,
Hold on, so.
there is no reason to do this. There is no reason to do this. We have been negotiating this with the school board for 2 years. There is no reason.
Respectfully, I was asking the questions on what happened with the previous contract, and I've heard a difference of opinions here, so I'm getting my information.
Where are you hearing a difference of opinions?
I hear a councilman from Max saying that it was done, it wasn't planned well in the first place.
But that's not what happened.
Okay, well, I'm asking.
That's what happened.
No, it's not what happened, Max.
They didn't have it, they didn't finish on time last year.
That's correct. They didn't finish on
Okay,
time.
so basically, it is what happened. The fact that they have an excuse and they can extend it It does not mean
So here,
that.
let me just stop here. So I think we'll just be careful. I'm not the attorney, but you can jump in. We need to be really, really careful
Yeah, this is.
with AJM and their contracts of making claims in public on TV or on tape, because they are a smart contractor, they'll sue you tomorrow. So be very clear. So if you want to have this discussion, we should move to closed session. We're talking about a specific contract and contractor and their performance and non-performance. I think you're walking a real slippery slope.
But plus, if you're talking about doing it in that same timeframe,
You can't.
which is, you can't reject the bids because you're concerned about the time frame that it's going to be done, and that there could be weather, and we have to get it done in that time frame if we start it. And then you go out and bid it for the same time frame, we're going to want to definitely get sued.
Unless it's lack of funding, but I think we have the funding.
Well, there's no other reason that we can reject all bids, unless there's a change in the scope.
Well, you could change the scope, you can make it you make it a bigger job, and add more pavement, and add more $100,000.
In these conversations you've had with AJM, you have a certain degree of confidence that they're going to get to this job in a timely manner?
It's a better question, though. Why would you? There was no problem with the actual quality of the work that they did, the paving work that they did. What they did was they finished late, and at the late time that they finished the work that they were doing, it was really too late weather-wise to do the sealing. All right. So, what would you expect to get in terms of a benefit if you were to rebid it? You're not going to get a lower price. Usually when you go out to rebid, you don't get a lower price.
You get the next highest price.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
was a good conversation. I think that based on the conversation we have, to meet the April date, we do not have another choice. So we discussed the issues. I see that we don't have another choice to meet the April. If April is the only day that we have, so we'll move forward.
Lauren, I just want, because you're relatively new, I just want to point out that unfortunately, due to the nature of the process, even though there was probably nobody that was really keen on having the same contractor, they didn't have a choice because of the bidding process. Okay. Well,
And the last issue that I have, can I ask you the last issue that I have?
Yeah.
For the parking lot, I'm sorry, no parking lot, the sidewalk for the senior center, it's a $20,000 job. Usually we don't pay more than 10% on this one. You have basically looking over there 3,000 and 3,000. Can you reduce those costs to match 10% of the cost of the parking lot? Or the,
I believe, let me translate.
yeah.
Okay, I think he's concerned about the engineering fees.
Oh, so our fees include all your coordination with the county? I mean, if you guys want to take over that portion of it.
That was not the question, can you reduce it to be at 10%? It's a simple question.
I mean, I have to. I mean, initially I'd say no. I don't give you proposals that are inflated. We give you for what the actual cost is. I have to look at it. If you want to hold it, you can hold it. But I got to look at it. I don't have to
Then the work won't get done.
look at it.
It's supposed to be the end of May.
I'm sure that he can come back next week and say yes or no.
I'm sure I know what the answer is now.
Yeah, we don't give it. Again, I have to be careful. I don't give it inflated costs for our projects. We have a contract with you for hourly rates. We have a contract to do work. We price it for what it is. If we're going to take money out, we have to take scope out. So either be less time on site or less coordination with the county. We rely more on your town staff to do more service, and we do less service. That's.
I think the time to discuss this is not now, when it's all laid out, but when we're proposing the project, when we're starting.
No, we have a resolution to approve the
Right,
cost of it.
and it's not the right time to discuss it. The time to discuss it is when we're making the proposed, putting the job together.
But today we approve the cost that basically Andy has told. So if once we approve that cost,
These are the same charges, engineering fees and charges that we've had on every job prior, when Mazers,
Like those
all
costs,
charges do the same thing.
those costs are built into the grant. So when you receive the community development grant, those costs are built into the county with the grant and approved back then. It's just, we're just moving that forward. It's not, it's kind of the process the county follows. So when you submit a grant, you submit your cost for engineering, surveying, whatever else you have to have. It's all submitted at one time.
Okay, that's all I have for you here.
Thank you.
I have one issue while you're here, although it's out of order.
Don't worry about it.
Parking lot?
He wants to leave.
Okay, so I've been working with Lizette on reviewing our parking lots, and what I'm finding is that the parking lots that connect with our downtown really aren't as useful as they could be. I think we can do better for them. So my question really is focusing on parking lot O, which is the parking lot behind our movie theater and bordering Washington Avenue behind the stores.
Okay.
And I've been in this parking lot. I also would like to do a few of the other ones downtown, but I'll focus on this one. My question for you is, there is not a logical pathway or egress into our downtown from this parking lot. You park there and you walk around, down Railroad, down Washington to get to the stores. And what I would like to try to review is whether we have any property in and around that parking lot that we can create a more logical pathway so that shoppers can park there and that we can get them into our
To
downtown.
look at, the place to look would be the tax map. So we look at the tax maps and see if we actually have any.
Yes.
I can send you a text message.
I'll walk into the building department, because questions like this is, I just go in there and look at the tax maps.
Send me an email of my card, and I'll send you a sheet. I'll send you a tax sheet that I'll locate the parking lot for you, and I'll send you a sheet that shows all
And
the.
then
I've seen some of it, but my question is, let's say, I believe that it's,
I'll take a quick look for you, and I will show you.
it's included in the grant.
No, I can't do that. It's illegal. That's not legal.
Okay, the next item, thank you.
Is that it? You can send me an email tomorrow.
Okay.
Can I get this?
So have we covered B?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to C, the spring craft and vendor sale. The last sale seemed to go extremely well. I don't know,
Just to move ahead, they need permission from council and once they have the green light, they can start organizing, contacting vendors and arranging for that.
for those of you that read the letter, there's 3 changes that they want to make in the way they run these, the fair. One is to have it on a Saturday instead of a weekday. The next would be a basket from each vendor to raffle off the day of the event, which sounds like a nice, promotion. And the third is a suggested donation of $2 to enter the event. Does anybody have any issues on any of those things?
I just want to know when Earth Day is, because it's usually Earth Day falls around this time.
It's just Friday.
Earth Day falling on Friday this year?
Earth Day is the last
I
Friday.
know that other people do celebrations.
Oh, that's a very good question. Okay.
It's up to them to basically make sure that they can get the lights from the.
Yeah, let's say just for the heck of it, make sure they're not conflicting with Earth Day.
It's September this year.
I understand that, but,
The street fair,
We go there.
huh?
the street fair is opposite Earth Day, it was last year also.
What day is that?
The 21st.
Okay, it's
Okay,
the 21st.
there's no conflict.
Thank you. Administrator's report, Mrs. Administrator?
Well, we spoke about the swimming pool parking lot and how since it has to be done within this time period of spring break, that they will be allowed to work for 24 hours. And given the circumstances, they are exempt, it will be exempt from the noise ordinance. If it rains Monday, then they have to work from our Tuesday to the next time. The DPW was notified that Councilman Barzalato was appointed as liaison from the last meeting. I know we had a good order discussion on the DPW commission, but at least it is important to notify DPW employees immediately any action that is taken, so that way it's not a rumor mill or a telephone game communication. Joel provided some follow-up information on budget hearings with items from the police department and DPW. I don't know if you want to do it now or hold it for Saturday, we have the budget books and can reference it.
Because since it's provided over here, we have asked for a record of repairs. And we have $26,000 in repairs, which is an itemized list of all the repairs. I cannot believe that this itemized list cannot be specified by truck, so we know how much is repaired each one of the trucks. basically we should replace them. It's not an efficient way of arguing for it. It's a money matter.
Max I agree with Max. I think we made it clear not only to the director of DPW, but also to the police chief, that we want logs kept on every vehicle so that we can, so they have at their fingertips the cost of each vehicle to maintain them.
And the cost for us, we can make a decision based on it.
Exactly. Well, I think it'd be helpful to them in making decisions as well. So
Exactly. The other issue that I have is the tree. Okay, it seems that either we trying to avoid or we don't understand the issue. We have a trees removed and trees planted. If you look at the deficiencies between trees removed and trees planted, it is the 1,200 trees that Bob Colbert mentioned when he was here, which is where we are. And here we have another thing, trees to be planted. Now, trees to be planted in 2014, were they planted? I don't know. Do we have a program to go and check if people said we'll plant trees?
no, it's not people. These are trees that we plant.
Well, it cannot be trees to be planted in 2014.
Well, Lisette,
I did follow up with the
Because I discussed it.
The trees to be planted are those that require tree mitigation when there's development, when there's a project, and then you have to plant it. If people aren't involved with the tree mitigation plan, then the money they put in is taken and put into the tree.
The question is,
what I think we need to have, Lisette, since I think, once again, for Jeff, well, Jeff, you may have a better handle on this because you were on the Board of Adjustment. So if somebody is building a new house and takes down X number of trees, and the mitigation is that he's got to plant 20 more than he took down. If he doesn't plant them immediately, he gets a period of time. In the meantime, he's posted a bond which doesn't get returned until the tree people sign off on it. And if he doesn't plant them after a certain period of time, that money goes into the tree fund. I think what would be very helpful to this list here is to find out, A, when they say trees to be planted, are those trees that were supposed to be planted that never got planted? Or have they been planted? That kind of, there's no answer there. Second of all, I think what we really would like to see is how much money we have in our tree fund, because...
It's 74,000.
Okay, well, then I think, speaking only for myself, that maybe we ought to ask our director of DPW to give us a plan on how some of that money is going to be, what his recommendation is. You want to spend $74,000 and how to spend it, or you want to spend 50 and hold 20?
But let me go back, because this is not the issue that we were discussing. What we were discussing is mainly, this is good, what we discussed is the fact that we as a town, we cut down trees on the streets, we cut down trees in the parks, and we don't plant us ourselves. And when we were here, basically we asked Bob Colbert, who was at the time, to come together and put together a plan and give us the plan that is going to show how we're going to replant all the trees that we, as a town, cut in parks and in streets, and we put them back based on our fund.
Well, that's exactly what I just suggested, because unless you want to have a budget line for to plant trees, which I don't think we need, because we've got $74,000. We need to have a plan on how we're going to spend that money.
And show how we know that we have problems with the trees in all the park, from Coyle Park to...
Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to speak for 7 people here, but, we need to spend this money. Now, whether we plant the trees ourselves and use that money, or we hire somebody to plant trees, we need a plan, and I would ask Mr. Rossi to see if he can get that plan to us, at least by the second meeting in March.
We have a violent agreement.
And I can tell you from the homeowners who pay into that, they don't plant the trees. It's cheaper for the contractors to just tack it on to the price of the house and say, what's $50,000 here? And that's what we found consistently happening.
Which means we are having the 1,200 tree deficit.
Let's move on.
Is there any way to have an ordinance that says I mean, you can't wipe all the trees out of a property.
So we have an ordinance, we have a very strong tree ordinance.
We just passed last
Max
It
11.
was introduced, it will be adopted March 6th.
Okay, but if prior, we have a tree ordinance that's going to be strengthened. And one of the interesting things about it, Lauren, is we once before strengthened our tree ordinance only to have a plethora of complaints from homeowners and contractors, and we lessened it. And
Now we straighten that, but the question, what Lauren was saying, which is a valid question, we have put a monetary value. So the monetary value is what Jeff said, okay, I'll put it in the price of the house. So Lauren is asking, is there any additional penalties besides the monetary value that we want to do as a council before, like, if you do not plant the mitigation trees, you don't get the certificate of occupancy, or things like that.
well, then what's the purpose of mitigation?
That's the whole idea, is to look at it and make a decision. What she's saying is, if we put it in the price of the house, we can wipe out all the trees and be
The
done.
problem is, our tree ordinance is so strong that when somebody goes to build a tree and they have to mitigate, they don't have enough room on the property to put all those trees in.
They
So
pay
they
for
say, so they pay for it. Now you're saying, if they don't put all the trees in, we won't give them a CO. Well, that clashes.
What Roy is saying is, additional to the mitigation in money, have some sort of a stronger, and that's something to consider.
No,
I'm
I'm
thinking
not,
about a situation where the entire property is white clean, where all trees are cut down.
Well, they can't
You just cut down, you know.
they can't do that anymore without our permission.
They can't do that.
But they seem to be getting it. I mean, I think that
No,
Before we put a resolution in, now they have to mitigate for every tree, before they go.
Well,
Every tree over a certain.
But Jeff, you understand that if the tree is not in the footprint of the, they have to have a reason to do it or they don't get permission.
And now they have to do it even for the footprint of the house, if it's a new construction.
So they have to mitigate.
Yeah, exactly.
How many trees?
Okay, let's move on.
And with more data, the senior center, they compile their current membership. They have 1,300 members, 251 are residents, and there were non-residents, there were some that didn't report their address. And just for information only, that the past several years, we received grants either through the Community Development Block Grant or FEMA for various improvements, and as we discussed with Andy, the newest resolution would be to fix the exterior sidewalk.
Those are our half of it. The other half would be correct.
But it would be, yes. And the last item is we were just notified that there was a state mandate to have a new flag, Killing Action flag, so
That's nice.
Jules had coordinated with both Rocky, Carl, and Joe to purchase the flag based on the proper requirements, and that's what I will.
Okay.
So that was my next question, because I would like, and I have it later, a flagpole in front of the building, but our flagpole is where?
Right there.
Right down there. And can you see that from the street? Is that viewable by anyone except for from Resco Park?
I don't know that you can see it through the street. But there is a, Tony, isn't there a flagpole in front of the firehouse? Yeah. That's right on River Ridge Road.
And there's no interest in getting anyone else to put it in front of Borough Hall entrance way? I always found it odd that we didn't have a flag.
Well, we have one here and we have one there. You want a third?
I would actually, I wouldn't mind a third, and.
Or do you have to put it in the budget?
Request, later on I'll have a request and I'll wait for it.
Well,
Or a pride flag.
if you like, we can make a request to the engineer to come and give us a ballpark figure on what it would cost,
Put up a flag.
probably a couple $1,000. You know, you have to, obviously you have to have an anchor in the ground, et cetera.
Yeah,
And, you know,
yeah.
it's a budget item. So we have 1%. No, I'm just kidding.
So, just to follow up on the budget, other than trying to obtain the itemized list of repairs on the DPW vehicle, you want me to maybe give you this information for Saturday, so you have it with you?
Yeah, otherwise, you know, we won't.
Well, I don't think we're going to, I would be very pleasantly surprised to get that information by Saturday.
No, but the information that's in the administrator's report, other items.
Oh,
so we
okay,
can
yeah,
do it.
please.
Okay, and even though I don't eat, you guys have to decide who's bringing food on Saturday.
Oh,
At
okay,
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
I can bring something.
I can bring breakfast,
I'll
I
bring
do.
something else.
Yeah.
Besides the munchkins.
I do breakfast always.
I'll bring fruit.
Okay, next is, moving along with their correspondence. I did speak with this lady because I wanted to get the story straight. And basically, there was a problem with the alarm system. She called the alarm company up. They came in and they replaced one of the fixtures. It malfunctioned, and that's why she had 3 false alarms. So I said to her that it's our normal process that we don't waive the penalty, but if I was her, I would ask the alarm company since they... So unless anybody has any other suggestions, we'll just say that we deny the...
We will always give them 2 free if they have the third one.
Any questions about the resolutions?
Yeah.
Yes.
When did you start? I'll go through
Okay.
that.
I like that, ladies first.
Absolutely.
Some of them we've been through. Oh, you know what, I had a follow-up about the surplus property. Who did we sell the truck to?
It's auctioned online, so whoever the highest bidder is, and there's a certain time period, so it's like going on eBay, somebody pulls a bid, and somebody, units, pulls a higher bid, so when the event is closed, whoever's the highest bidder.
Okay.
Normally, these vehicles that we put out for auction would not bring in enough money to build a flagpole. They're in really bad shape.
Average is 6.
That's the one that got trashed this time.
You know if we're doing the same with the garbage truck? We authorize it for surplus property.
The only property that we have done so with our police vehicles.
No, DPW vehicles. I think I mean all
You can
DPW.
put anything on, anything that would be auctioned, we're going with the deals, but it just has to be listed as an exhibit on the resolution.
Max?
Yeah, I have 2 things. I have expenses, which I'm going to discuss separately, but they're part of the consent agenda, so we'll have to discuss them here. The first of all is the Bergen County Shared Services Agreement. At the bottom of the contract, there is something that by separately initialing here municipality request enrollment in the optional preventive maintenance program. Are we going to be part of that? Because none of them is signed, none of them. Are we going to be part of this preventive maintenance? I thought we have our own preventive. I need to understand that process.
Since you have an option in the event, that's how we had.
So the question is, are we going to join or not? We need to approve something that
We
we
need
don't
to
know.
approve to join because if there is an emergency in our mechanics or
No,
internal.
we approve the joint. The question is about specific preventive maintenance, because we have to make a decision if we're going to do preventive maintenance or not when we sign the contract.
Cost more money.
That's what we need to
No,
understand.
it doesn't cost us anything to join the co-op.
Not the part, the preventive maintenance of the
But
bond.
there's no charge to join, for the shared.
No, you want to, you commit, then you have to send them over to.
No, you don't have to.
Additional fees to join this part of the program. That's my.
You don't have to send it over there, but it gives us an
It's
alternative.
just an optional.
Correct.
Okay.
All right?
Because it's also, I think the state likes shared services, so it's reported to the state.
All right. Now, what's next?
Okay, now we will go into the expenses. And I had a conversation with Susan about expenses over here, so we're going to go them one by one. One of the expenses over there is $100 on car details and at Andy's SOS.
I did some research on this, Max. I actually spoke with the fire chief today. The $100 is for 4 vehicles
Yeah.
getting, well, I hesitate to use the word details. You're not going to get a detailed situation for $25. But what it is a exterior car wash and a hard look at the interior, cleaning it out. Now, the fire chief says they often do it themselves, but over the course of a few months, they 4 times went down to this place to get the cars cleaned up in an effort to keep them well maintained. I also checked with Susan, and apparently we have been using this vendor for many years. The police occasionally use it as well. So
The question is, should we have this policy that the people that have personal use of their town's car are going to get now the cars detailed, and we're going to pay for that?
well, why don't we do this? If you want to call the fire chief in, or the police chief, or both, to discuss this, get it.
It's a-
No, but how do we make a decision without hearing from them as to why they do it?
I'll be glad to have them here. The question is, do we want to, because if we agree to the police department and to the fire department, we have to agree to the EMS.
No, we don't.
Why not? It's a policy, you can't
No,
discriminate.
no, we're not discriminating. It's a matter of, look,
We have a fire person here. Tony, do you know about this service? Do people normally use this? Is this something, I mean, we have someone here, we're lucky enough to have a councilman.
How much have you been sent 4 times for $25 each to do both the outside and the inside? It's not a normal process because they do it both in-house as well, and this was one of those circumstances where they had to get it done. I mean, it's over $100. I think for a volunteer fire department, I don't think you should be.
For the volunteer fire department, I think that that's fine.
Listen, let me just say this. You want a fleet that's going to look nice, whether it be police, ambulance, or fire department, at all times. At all times. You ever been to New York City before? Take a look at their cars. You ever been there? So ask yourself, do you want to have that image, or do you want an image that looks professional, looks, you know?
So, Tony, I have no problem with
That's
that.
the way we do it.
This is what we need to make a policy, if the next year is going to be $100. We need to,
It's 4 vehicles.
I understand.
This is an
So-
ongoing practice that we
for the year,
No, you won't.
all right?
non-ongoing practice.
What else, man?
All right, here we have the next thing, there is a charge for a tree removal for $250 by arrow, which is also what Tony brought up. In December, as a matter of fact, it was October, we had a big conversation at the table over here. There were 3 openings for different people in the DPW. And we suggested we postpone it, or we hire somebody from the outside, as a matter, I'm glad that Mark is here. And the answer is, no, we have to hire them immediately because we cannot cover the trees unless we hire them. And we said, well, we're going to have a new chief coming in, a new, maybe he should select no. So we hired 3 people, and now I don't understand why, after we hired 3 people, we had to use outside people.
Because the people we hired were not in the tree division. The tree division was composed of 3 people, 2 of whom, including the supervisor, were out on long-term disability. So basically, we didn't cut down any trees for a long period of time. We got backed up, and, this was a management decision now. If you don't like the management decision, then we got to call the manager in and tell him that we don't want outside vendors cutting down trees. But from my experience, because when people have a dangerous tree in the front yard and they have to wait 3 or 4 months till our guys get around to it, they get very upset. So once again, it's just a management decision as to whether to put it, to do it in-house or to, and there are times when we don't have the equipment also. Our tree obviously has a lot more equipment. I agree with you that we shouldn't do more out of house than we need to. But
And we specifically, if I remember, one of them, the people that we hired was the so-called tree cutter. Because, we were talking about how much is training to get the finding the tree and stuff like that. So hopefully it doesn't happen. The next thing is,
before you go, Lisette, would you just let Mr. Rossi know that we are concerned with the amount of trees being cut down by outside vendors?
Just so you know, only 2 of those positions were filled, and one was building maintenance, there's driver labor, and they didn't start until January. Also, so they had to go through the vetting process, background check.
yeah, and this was done in February.
Started
And
January.
this was, our was done, if you wouldn't,
So the first was
beginning of February.
the person who's driving the labor was not certified. As Carl had mentioned, he is looking to cross-train people and send them to get proper licensing and certification.
Okay, the next thing I have is, we have 5 emergency calls. Emergency calls from Hugio 005. I guess those are the people that do our maintenance. They were on 12.3, 12.7, 12.19. Why are they so-called emergency? If they are people that we basically hire them to respond if we have a problem, when they charge us $2,399, I don't think that should be an emergency issue. Should be a regular maintenance. You hire them, basically they do the maintenance, because my experience has been emergency maintenance is twice as much as you get as a regular call. And the prices are showing over here. And we had the previous one that was also $4,000. Can somebody look at that and understand why do we have to have emergency calls for people that are hired to do maintenance when we call them? There is a problem, you call them, and then they respond as a regular maintenance call.
I think let's do this, Lisette or Susan. I think, never mind Joe Rossi, because a lot of these were back in December before, never mind Carl Rossi, because he didn't start. In fact, all of these calls are either in November or December. Would you ask, Lisette, would you see if you can get Joe Rossi to give us an itemized breakdown of each one of these calls so we better understand why we're being charged as much as we're being charged?
Exactly. And why is it
The later one, I have a detail.
the question, Susan, is why is it emergency? That should be a regular call.
Well, once again, we need a breakdown. We need to understand if we're being charged at an emergency rate, why? Okay? Was there no heat here on a Tuesday morning and it was 30 degrees outside? Or, you know.
But that should be a regular call. Maintenance?
Well, we need to know which of these calls were actually charged at an emergency rate and why.
The next one is really something that we discussed over here. There is a bill for our labor lawyers for $31,000. We have agreed that we will not pay till we have a review of their bills.
I would like to see the.
Yeah, we discussed over here. There is a bill for our labor lawyers for $31,000. We have agreed that we will not pay till we have a review of their bills.
I would like to see the.
Yeah, just bear with me for a second. And we all agreed to that. What's the process?
The only thing we agreed to at the last meeting was to ask them if they would consider.
No, what we agreed is for Lawrence, the council, we agreed as a council that Lawrence is going to go and review the billing with the lawyer. My question is, when we agree something like that, who's putting this bill in? Who's basically when?
Well, first of all, none of these bills have been paid.
But that's why if we approve today, they will be paid.
Well, if you don't want to approve it, then
That's what I'm trying to.
so the bill has been put in because we have a bill, and if we don't pay our bills in a timely manner, our vendors get upset.
Yeah, but we have to understand here, we agreed not to pay.
It's
And
not
I
paid.
agree. But it was put in, and if I don't catch them, if I didn't catch them, they would have been paid. And that's against the process that we agreed upon.
Well, you're not the only one here. I'm sure Lauren would have caught it.
Well,
We both caught it, actually.
Yes.
We both caught it, and I just wanted to make sure it hasn't been paid yet, because we did discuss with the law firm that we would like to review the bill. So if it hasn't been invoiced, then we can go ahead and do the review, which is
all right,
fine.
so I'm gonna have to, the council to.
No, Lauren,
Yes.
in a timely manner, get together with Susan and go over the bills. Okay? But I will tell you this, Lauren, you've been here since January. Prior to January, I had memorandums from the administrator going back to June, where each month we got a total of what was being spent on by the labor attorney.
Was that brought to the council
Yeah,
each time?
each time. Including back in December 12th, where we got a sheet that showed the total of $72,000 on the investigation costs.
So, maybe just,
This is something that everybody saw.
if there was a memorandum on what the costs were, and what work was done, what we saw as a council was only the number.
Well, at that particular time, nobody asked for anything more than
So,
the number.
no, that's not true, Peter. With all due respect, we asked for every $10,000 to be a report done to the council on what specifically work was done.
I think it was, there's a lot was said on this. It's just telling us, right, what was done, but not giving a time breakdown, but
Yeah.
how much they had done.
Exactly, and it was never presented, only a number was. So
Right.
now please hold on to the bills, don't pay anything, and I have to review it. And that's all I have for
The
you.
bills that give, but the bills that give, they give like a regular printout on hours and,
I guess Susan, not
I
her.
should have had, they give us already.
Well, Susan, Lauren, if you need more information, Susan will get it for you.
I mean, my bills usually have a summary, but
well, line have line items, each separate line item, and then something at the bottom. You know, so.
That's what
Okay. That's all I have.
That's it?
So
This is it.
the bill is being adopted with exception.
No, we're gonna hold on the
I
bills.
think back to the days when you didn't chair.
can we take that one? How about we get to pay
A
it?
good one.
Yeah, we just made the only the legal.
5 meetings.
So the bill has to have a revision.
Yeah, the revision, yeah.
Jack,
So we're removing that from,
Just this list, are we removing Aaron also?
No, Aaron, no, only this. Only the
Jeff?
legal bills.
that's on the bill list, right? So,
Since this is the first time I'm seeing one of these on the consent agenda, I just have a question about how it's approached, and I reached out actually to Hercules Victus as chair of the AFA. When we have an application for outside seating on a sidewalk, do we look at whether or not that seating is going to restrict wheelchair access along that portion of the sidewalk? I have nothing against outdoor seating, but
Absolutely. First,
but I know that he said the committee has never, ever been asked.
well, the committee, it's not, there are ADA requirements.
Right.
As long as the seating chart meets those ADA requirements, we vote on it. You won't even see it if it doesn't meet the standards.
Because I know last year that the same place had a table, and it was only a few feet away from a no U-turn sign, which would not have met the ADA.
Well, I guarantee you,
That would not have met the ADA.
either the table was placed in the wrong position, or it wasn't part of the plan, or they didn't have approval at all. I don't know what the case was. But in a situation like that, bring it to the attention of the building department, one of our code enforcement people. Well, first the building department will make sure that they have approval. They'll check the plan, and they'll make sure that what they have out there is according to plan. And
Is it the building department then who, when we get the application, is checking for ADA compliance?
Yes, so the my department receives the application, we do the administrative review as far as the paperwork is concerned. And then it's sent over to the building department, look at the plan, and the construction official reviews to make sure there's adequate spacing. In the event there isn't, and if he rejects it, we let the applicant know. If after the course of receiving, and it gets to the mayor council once all the internal checks have been completed. If in the course of having the permit that seats are put in properly, which need to let the code enforcement officer know, we do go in.
okay, 4.5. No problem. All right. For the good of the order, we talked about Pride Day and Flag Day.
Well, no, I'd like to actually say something about that.
Well, actually, the first thing on the agenda is the DPW
Okay.
commission, but I think in the administrative report, Jeff, you saw, well,
here's my concern, and it was something that you said, Mayor, when we first discussed it, is you were concerned about micromanagement by a liaison. You said that was a bad thing. And I went and I looked at our town organization chart, and I was thinking that we have different commissions and boards, and is a liaison the right way to go, or do we really want something akin to, and this is where I rely on the experience of those who have dealt with boards and commissions in the past, something more akin to the police department. When I look at two things, one, the budget of DPW, they're number two to the police department, where we do have a commission. And then number two, when you look at the bottom line, even though planning board is not directly in the buildings, every other agency has something there. And I was concerned about your comment about micromanagement, and I think that there might be a better way to work around that, and I wanted to discuss that as well.
First of all, when we had this discussion, I pointed out to you that you're incorrect in stating that every other department has something. And I use as a prime example the recreation department. We have a liaison with the recreation board, not with the recreation department.
Right, but we have a recreation board.
Right.
And when I look
But
at
the recreation board is made up of citizens, not made up of elected officials.
And that's why I'm saying that we can discuss different ways of doing this, but when I look at the bottom of everything on this chart that they gave us, I guess, at the beginning, they gave us, at the beginning of the Borough Tenafly organization, everything leads to one of those dotted boxes at the bottom, one way or the other, except for the one agency that has a $5 million budget, which is second only to police, which is 5 3/4 or 5.8 million proposed budget for 2018. And that's look, we all know that the function of DPW has changed over time. Used to be, we burn leaves, now they have to pick them up. It used to be that there was no recycling with garbage contract. Their role has gotten so expansive that maybe we need to visit or revisit how we deal with them. And that's all. And that's for discussion, not.
We can put that on the agenda, it's for the good of the order, so if the council would like to discuss this, we can put it on the next work session.
So, and I'll just,
We want to invite Carl Rossi. Something, he keeps saying this back and forth, with all due respect. I would prefer to hold back on this until our administrator is back.
the issue here, I would say, is we have this issue for so many years.
Who's we?
And as a town, Tenafly, we as a council, we have this issue, and then we have the issues with the DPW. And they never got better. We started to put together, we have to start to put together a plan. When are the trees going to be, what's the plan? When are we going to have the garbage pickup from all the playgrounds? What is the schedule? Who's going to do it? And so on. When are going to be the bushes around the playgrounds and stuff cut? What's the schedule? That should have been done a long time ago. And just to say, oh, we had that for 8-10 years, now it's time to act anymore. It's not anymore, I'm the manager, and a liaison can only tell you to ask the questions. I think the time is time for us to...
You want to be part of the decision as to when the trees are going to be cut?
No, that's the other way is to... management respond to you. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off here, I'm sorry. What I would like to do is work with them to say, would you please put together a plan? Which streets are going to be cleaned on what days? What is going to be the schedule?
Hold on, Lauren, please.
What will be the schedule for us to cut the bushes, to pick up the garbage at the end? Can you put together, once you do all this and you put it all together, I'm not going to tell them when. Put together a plan, come back to us, then it's easy to manage, because at Tuesday...
Easy for whom to manage?
For the manager of the DPW.
So once again, if the parks need maintenance, if the leaves aren't picked up in the park, Our job is to let them know that we're not happy with the way the leaves are picked up in the park.
I think the commission is a great way then for that communication, to have an interactive relationship with the DPW, well, liaison, commission, whatever we decide.
Well, we have a liaison, and you know, do you want to give it a chance? It was suggested that we have a liaison, we have one.
Which has been undermined by the memo that Drew said, you are not to do anything, you are not to take.
Well, what are you suggesting,
I'm
what are you suggesting that we do?
As far as I was saying, we put together a
that we shouldn't do?
plan. We put together a plan.
Who's we?
We, as a council, tell the DPW that we need a plan for basically picking up the garbage.
So you want to give the DPW a plan?
No, we asked them for
All
them
right,
to.
so we don't need a commission to do that.
I think that we need.
I might explore Jeff's idea in the discussion, we can weigh in with.
Well, I already suggested we put this in a work session, but I suggested that we wait till the administrator comes back. I mean, because the administrator oversees, in case, you know, with the exceptions of when we get involved, oversees the whole situation.
And so you're really
You're really going around her to do this, and there's no need to, since you're claiming this problem has existed for 8 years.
Yeah.
Let her wait another 8 weeks until the administrator comes back. Or do you want to take over the job of administrator?
For my understanding, because I'm new to this, as Keith pointing out. So I know we have, for example, a police commission. And I'm sure the police commission doesn't exist. You sit there and ask the police, are you arresting this person or that person? So we're not talking about that level. But they must have a function, otherwise we do away with it.
Well, I can tell you what the function is. I served on it for 15 years, but maybe people don't feel it's been doing what it's supposed to do. We sit, the police chief comes in, and Dan, Phil, if I miss anything, please add to it. Police chief comes in and communicates with the police commission as to what's going on, what issues there are, asks for some feedback occasionally, and we at the same time ask questions that either we come up with or questions that have been presented at this table. Where, you know, you want to do that? Well, I will tell you this: the police commission has not, in any way, shape, or form, done any of the things to the police department that you're suggesting the DPW commission do.
Well, remember, don't attribute all I did.
I'm attributing it all to you, my friend.
Okay,
So
so
I
let's start
wanted a discussion as to whether or not that
If
makes
we hold
sense.
the discussion then, Stephen recommended when Will comes back for April 3rd, even if she's not back physically, I should obtain certain information, because March 6th, we have our bond council and our auditor to talk about the budget, and March 20th, there's something that we will be doing in addition to introducing the budget. So that way, April 3rd, I'll make sure Carl is here, and that'll be the first item on the agenda.
Right.
And then in the meantime, are we going to continue with the liaison as appointed?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And the mayor was specifically requested. Okay, I think I'm up. So I'd like to introduce, similarly to the Gun Violence Resolution Act that we put into June 2nd, a Pride Day for our town. As we are a welcoming community, I do believe that we do not have a LGBT presence. I know that Jim Tedesco on the county level is making this a top priority as well. And so I believe Tenafly, in that spirit, should be a welcoming community for all. And I would like to add, if we were a flagpole, to put up a pride flag. So I would like to add the addition of a pride flag that can go up for Pride Day and other times it's, if wanted, at least the existing flagpole. And I would like to create a resolution for a day in which our town acknowledges pride.
Okay.
Very much in agreement with you.
Okay. The next thing?
Who's going to volunteer to do that?
Well, that's the resolution.
That's it, and send it to me.
I will happily write it.
Someone wants to be there.
I can write my own.
No, as a base.
Just content, I know, you don't have to format it or anything, I'll think you can work it up to. It should be.
All right.
Next.
Take the pen away from
Next
him.
thing is,
Take the pen away from him.
Just a little check that.
Okay, you got it. The next thing I would like to add to the order is something actually that was raised by Councilman Barlato and seconded by me, is a review of property maintenance code, and most specifically 10-9.10, which is talking about empty storefronts and the ability to possibly put in some quarterly fees, vacancy fees, or penalties if they are not maintained in good, pristine working condition, free from debris, unsightly exterior, well lit, and maintained, attractive for potential buyers.
Lauren,
Yes.
we've discussed this in great length with our attorney. Bill, where are we on this?
So I know you work with the Chamber of
I
Commerce.
think that, right. I think the last time we discussed this was about 2 weeks ago. Which was about 2 weeks ago. We actually, Christine and I were just, before the meeting, we were trying to figure out when that was. What's the scope of what we're going to require? If you remember, when I met with the chamber, I said that they were interested in trying to have a consistent appearance from the street. And they were talking about.
That's a different scope.
Oh, you're talking about.
This is the pristine one.
I know, I have two very specific things to amend.
But that's vacant buildings.
Vacant buildings.
Okay. Well, that's part of the same thing, isn't it?
Well, so this is to basically, not penalize, but to encourage our existing landlords to make their storefronts and their buildings here in Tenafly presentable, clean, safe, sightly, the words pristine condition have to be in the statute. But I looked up Jersey City, and Jersey City has one of these, property maintenance statute. And they have two penalties that I would like to bring up, and I know Tony didn't mention this. The first is a vacancy registration and a fee. If you are vacant, you are required to, one, register with whether it's Chamber of Commerce or Borough, and there's a fee associated with that, and a Jersey City, they get $100.
It should not be the Chamber of Commerce.
So the borough. So it was a $100 registration fee for vacants, vacant storefronts. The second thing was an over-the-time violation of the maintenance penalty. So if you're vacant and then you keep it unsightly, unsafe,
No, you can't be subjective. Unsafe, there are specific code provisions with respect to what you have to do.
Right.
If you're talking about downtown, all right, there's not much grass, what grows in the cracks, downtown.
We have an area that is really unsightly.
A few.
If it's like in the right of way, in front of a commercial building, you have to keep it clear of trash and weeds and things like that. But when you start saying aesthetics, keep it nice, you can't be so subjective. It has to be something objective. Registrations is okay, but
Is it more of an effort to get these vacant stores filled? Are we looking to encourage landlords, because this is what you just said, I think, to acquire tenants rather than let their property sit there? Or are we looking for empty buildings to have some sort of a look?
No, the first.
So then let's be clear. It's not a matter of look. It's a matter, if a building is, if a storefront is vacant,
Yeah.
we want it registered,
Okay.
so then we can track it.
Right.
And then after whatever period of time we decide, we start penalizing somebody, or, well, you don't want to say penalizing, what's the term you would use as an attorney?
You
Re-register?
You can just increase the registration fee based upon the amount of time that it's empty, but it can't be penal.
Well, there are two aspects. So I agree with the registration fee over time. But the second thing is we do have vacant stores currently in our downtown in which the owners have passed or have no longer done that business. The one on the inside, for example, Blue Star Burger and then the Blue Store next door, they still have things within the building, within the storefronts, and the windows, the signs have been taken down. If I'm a prospective buyer or a prospective business, and I come to Tenafly to see, is this someplace I want to develop my business? And I think it's very off-putting.
Well, keep in mind though, all right, I hear what you're saying, we already have an ordinance where if a store closes, the sign is supposed to be taken down within, I would guess, 10 or 30 days. But what would you rather have, a store with no signage, Or, you know, a
Plain
store.
white, nothing there, you know, something that's in pristine condition,
that's-
needs to be rented.
And that's what the chamber was talking about, to try to have a consistent, neat appearance for the vacant storefronts. You know, it's trying to say to people, hey, you know what, the inside of your store is dirty. You can't legislate neatness. You can legislate safety and health, but not so much neatness.
Unsafe.
All right. But you can legislate, you know, storefronts for a consistent look. I think it was a great idea. Hard to implement word-wise, to say, how do you say that? But
Jersey City has one, they've enacted, and a few other counties.
Jersey City has, but they have situations where they have, not so much now downtown, but there are some areas that, you know, where the buildings are unsafe. You know, you have, you know, let's say sidewalks and
I don't think you're gonna find
You're going to find that situation.
a municipality today that doesn't have vacant stores. I think it's a good idea that when a store becomes vacant, the owner must register with us. If he doesn't register with us, then there's a fine. And if you want to have a re-register every 3 months, where you can escalate the cost of the registration, so be it. I don't think, from an appearance set, as long as they meet our property code, I don't think we should go any further.
There is something to be said to the fact that you want to make the town appealing. And if the storefront is neglected, and you have more than one, then the appeal of people to come downtown and benefit the other stores is very much reduced.
So neglected.
Let me tell you.
It's statutory, it's in our statute.
And what I could say is that a empty storefront, we can legislate to have no debris in the windows, no leftover from the, and to be maintained in a way that basically is clean to see, I should say, but you'll find a way to do that so it doesn't have the appearance of an abandoned store, because we don't want to have abandoned stores in our town.
I'm not being subjective. Our code enforcement has actual standards in Tenafly statute. It's 10-9.10. And it says, defects increasing hazards of fire, accident, other calamity.
Okay.
Lack of adequate ventilation, light or sanitary facilities, dilapidation, disrepair, structural defects, uncleanliness is in there. Failure to have included a building running water or inside toilet facilities. The public officer in reaching such determination shall be guided, among other things, by the standards in the building code, the zoning, and the sanitary code. So our officers actually currently tasked with this. So it's not that I want to be so loose.
If you haven't dealt with situations where those violations are given, they're not the type of situations that you see where you just have a messy inside storefront.
Okay.
They're not talking, those don't pose health hazards. I mean, there could be a fire hazard. You have a pile of paper, you know, that's sitting there, you know, that could flame up. But as I said, you can't legislate neatness.
Here's what I-
legislate safety and health.
Here's what I would suggest. Lauren, tell me if this meets with your approval.
Because we already have it.
Why don't we prepare an ordinance that requires landlords to register a commercial property if it's vacant? And we'll include in that a fee for registration. And do we want to have them re-register every 3 months?
You want to spread it out?
Quarterly, no, that's quarterly is a good idea.
Or give them
3 months.
Yeah, that's
3 months?
maybe
Yeah, quarterly is a good idea, 3
I
months is
already
good.
wrote that ordinance.
Well, put this on the next work session with his room, and we'll discuss it and we'll move it along.
Yeah.
Okay? Anything else, Lauren?
Yes, so, okay. The next thing I would like to do is to amend, let me go back to the statute. I would like to amend our smoking ordinance, and, sorry, buddy, I'd like to enforce our smoking ordinance first. But right now, 3-60.3 is the areas in which smoking is prohibited, but it does not include our outdoor seating areas in which there's sidewalk cafes. And well, it is outdoors, but what I'm finding is that people are standing on the edge of the outdoor cafes and smoking, which interferes with the use and enjoyment of those outdoor cafes. 20 feet from the door is not adequate. I would like our Tenafly ordinance to be 5 or 10 feet.
And 20 feet from the door is one thing. She's talking about 5 or 10 feet from any point in the outdoor cafe.
Yes,
Not entrance, from the seating where they're eating.
from the
20 feet from
city.
the entrance and the entry is different from 20 feet from the outdoor cafe. Well, who is enforcing that right now? Who's enforcing that?
Yeah, who's enforcing those
What
laws?
happened to smaller governments here?
We always say you can't smoke outside, and then you have the outside cafe there.
I always thought you weren't allowed to smoke if there's an outside seating in a restaurant. Is this part of a restaurant? I thought you couldn't smoke in a restaurant.
If it's outside like a patio, you can't.
That's not written in Tenafly ordinances.
So, Bill, why don't you look at that? And if this is not in the ordinance,
I'll take 20 feet.
and we want to, make sure that the outdoor patios are included, and a buffer of 5 feet is around the outdoor area.
Hold on, folks.
The concept of an ordinance.
Oh, hold on.
The concept of an ordinance is to bring about change, to regulate. We've got, who's going to enforce such a thing? We don't have any smoking police. We don't have, it's kind of ridiculous, really. I mean, listen, I understand the concept, I understand what you're trying to achieve.
But we have
You can
ordinances.
put anything you want here, but nothing to do with it.
Let me answer that. We have ordinances saying that you cannot sell tobacco to kids that are under 21. Who is enforcing that?
We don't have an ordinance.
Yes, we do.
No, it's actually state law.
No. State law is 18. We have passed in Tenafly a 21 years old ordinance. So just to answer the question, who is enforcing that in your mind?
Not a clue.
Not a clue. So I think that
And I'm about to say nobody.
exactly.
Okay, so the point is,
The state will occasionally send people in an effort to see if the 18 or more with liquor than cigarettes, that the people aren't selling liquor or cigarettes to people that aren't supposed to be sold. In a case like ours, where we have the 21 and over, I think that we basically put that in there in an effort to minimize, to discourage
Yes.
kids from between 18 and 21 from buying cigarettes. I don't think any one of us, when we passed that ordinance, actually believed that it was going to eliminate it,
No.
because that was unrealistic.
So what I'm saying is the following thing here, and, Lord, I'm sorry. If we put it in the ordinance, it will discourage other people from smoking, even if it's not 100% effective. If we don't have it, then people will not have any reason not to smoke on those areas.
so you're talking about if somebody from Crestville comes to our outdoor cafe,
Yeah.
I don't know what. So, are you going to have a sign up that says smoking not allowed?
Yes,
Yes,
I
of
say
course.
smoking not allowed within 20 feet, whatever the state
The
law.
problem is, you can over-regulate things.
20 feet of the outdoor seating area?
Well, that's the answer is 20, I said 5, or,
5 feet around the
20 feet
city.
from
The
the.
doorway is 5 feet from the. Okay, make it 10, because I don't feel like if it is smoking, I don't want to breathe it while I'm eating. We would increase the sidewalk. We have an ordinance already. We have an ordinance already in which numerous areas of our town says smoking prohibited, including on rural property. And while maybe no one goes around and slaps fines, it would make it easier to have a fine if I'm sitting in a cafe and someone's smoking next to me in an outdoor cafe. Well, you are outdoor, and I'm still eating next to a person.
Warren, if you say something to the wrong person, you may not survive your first term.
Well, that's okay, I'm going to take the risk so that I can begin to allow you to be outside. I'm just saying. No, I'm
So, Bill,
Well, hold on. First of all, this is for the good of the order. This is normally where we bring up ideas and the council decides if they want to discuss them further. So just quickly going around the room, we have 5 council people here and a mayor, in case it's 2.5 to 2.5. Do you want to pursue expanding our non-smoking ordinance in the manner that Lauren has suggested? Matt?
Yes.
Jeff?
I want us to discuss it definitely.
Lauren?
So what we're talking about,
Oh,
though,
wait a second, Bill.
Okay.
Let Tony go.
No.
So, okay. Now,
so what we're talking about, though, if I understand you, Lauren, that it would be, you'd say, if it's no smoking within a certain distance from an outdoor seating area, right? If the consider going over on Central, what's the place on Central over there? No, not Central.
Friendly Live Fish?
No, over by,
and it's not,
Emmanuel Deli?
not Central, not Central,
No, the train, the.
Friendly Deli?
down where, no, the one on the side street down,
Prospect Terrace?
if you have private property, that's adjacent to the road.
Sale, anything saleable?
Yeah, right. If you have,
The house next door is very close to,
right,
but 5 feet from the, 5 or 10 feet from the eating area, I don't know. So you're saying you stand on that
if you're,
person's driveway?
right, you can't, you can't say just 5 feet away, because if you're on private property, outside, you can smoke.
So then it has to be within borough,
Has to be on public property.
I'm happy with
on
that.
public property, under that limitation.
Yeah.
And that's
all right, so, see, Lauren, one of the, and I had this discussion with you this afternoon. There's no such thing as a very short discussion on some of these issues. And now what we're going to do is after spending 15 minutes on this, we're going to have to go through the whole thing again.
Yeah.
So, and if
I have one more
you, well, but before we spend 15 minutes on whatever that is, we'll just briefly talk about it and decide if we want to expand a discussion on it in the future. So we will put this on another agenda so we can talk about it again.
Okay, and then the last one that we just voted on, if we want to talk about it more, is our current sign and neon sign ordinance. There have been complaints within the town of blinking lights or lights that are too hard and distracting for drivers. I spoke with the Chamber of Commerce on it, that a few signs in particular, one of our new businesses, are very glaring white boxes that are distracting to drivers coming down.
Well, I got him to replace the flashing neon
Look
sign.
at now there's big white boxes. But anyway, so I'd like to take a look at our sign ordinance and see if we can amend it.
You might want to keep in mind that some of the changes you may suggest may put our $35,000 message board in jeopardy.
Except for the town of Tenafly.
Well, this is a business.
I still have to do that.
We'll go around the table. Is there any, do people want to discuss this?
Yes.
Jeff?
Sure.
And I have one for the good of the order.
Come on.
No, I'm sorry,
Get
but
tired?
no, this is important. A few people brought up to my attention again the fact that the Tenafly people go and drive on bicycles and scooters on the sidewalk. And there is absolutely no enforcement, and they're afraid to walk on that.
When you say a few people, can you name one besides Joanne?
I'm not going to name any
I didn't
names.
think so. We have an ordinance already.
Yes.
We have an ordinance which prohibits bike riding on sidewalks in the downtown business district. Once again, the question becomes, who's going to enforce it? Okay, now, you know, if an 8-year-old boy is riding his bike down there, do we want to, should we suggest jail time or what?
There is no question about jailing anybody. It's a question of basically having a sign saying this is not allowed. And people, once they see the sign, 99% of the people would be willing and ready to help.
Okay, I think a sign is a good idea, but before we do the sign, the question I have for you, the ordinance as it reads now says bicycles. Do you want to add words that will eliminate scooters and skateboards.
Yes.
So Bill, can you come up with the terminology for the next meeting? It's a simple amendment to that ordinance. And then we need to decide where and how many signs we want to put up.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's overdue. Huh? No, I think a unicycle should be okay. It's got to be more than one wheel. Because if the unicycle bumped into one of these...
And then, remember, no smoking with a unicycle.
No. If you're on a unicycle, you can smoke.
See how short that was?
You're a model for us all.
Yes.
Unless somebody has a reason, I'd like to ask for a motion to close the work session, please. I'm begging you.
So,
Second. All in favor? Aye. A 2-minute break, and then we're going to go through the public meeting so quickly, your head is going to spin. My head is already spinning.
The hoverboard.
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice requirements have been satisfied. Meeting dates for the year confirmed at the annual meeting are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center and published in the record within the first 10 days of the new year. Copies of all revised additional meeting notices are sent via fax to the Record, Suburbanite, Northern Valley Press, and are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center. Salute to one of the flags. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Maybe we should pass an ordinance saying Fergie can't sing the national anthem here. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Barzalato?
Here.
Councilmember Bash?
Here.
Councilmember Dayton?
Here.
Councilmember Grossman?
Here.
Councilmember Park?
Here.
Mayor Rustin?
Here. I'll entertain a motion to approve the following sets of minutes. January 23rd, the closed session, the work session, the regular meeting, and the second closed session. And
So-
February 6th, the work session, regular meeting, and closed session, please.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Revisions to the agenda.
We have one, and we're just removing an item from the bill list, and that's on page 22 of the bill list, and that's the Ruderman, Horn, and Esperanto bill.
Okay, where that's concerned, Lauren, would you do your best to make sure that we have a sense of where we're going with this for the next meeting?
Yes.
Because I don't like to owe people money.
And that's actually two bills. There's
Right.
Right.
Public comments, anybody care to speak? Please.
John Worms, Walnut Drive, and I came here planning to speak on one issue, but I'd like to speak on a second issue first. The issue of smoking is a very important issue, and I'm pleased that Lauren brought it up. But the council, the problem with existing ordinances is that it's very hard. It's a high level of penalty. You criminalize smoking, so a person that you want to tell he's smoking, you're giving him some sort of a criminal record. Now, I don't know, the officer really probably knows, definitely knows better than I do. I don't know what the procedures, how the procedures differ or not, but the legislature apparently felt the same way, because last spring, just before the legislative session ended, they passed a law allowing municipalities to pass, that had smoking ordinance already, to pass ordinances that would decriminalize smoking and change it to a violation, such as a parking ticket, and which the Environmental Commission strongly supported. I believe I brought it up to the council at that time, and you accepted it and thought it was a good idea, and you asked the attorney to draft an ordinance, which he has done, and oh, you haven't done it yet, I'm sorry.
No,
It was just 6 months ago, but.
She did it.
I think that's a good idea. Bill, can we hand it?
No, it's
Yeah,
done.
well, that-
It's done.
It's done.
It's done.
Yeah, we did it at the end of last year. We changed it from criminal to civil.
Well, thank you very much for it.
Thank you.
But we're gonna put them in jail either way.
But I think the issue is
He's never lived
on
with a smoker.
signs.
Throw the book at him.
Well, no, but I'm not, that wasn't my point. My point was just the point was that presumably it would be, and it certainly fits in with the point that Councilwoman Hayden mentioned. I mean, if there's a party smoking next to a open cafe, it seems to me that's a lot easier to give that person a parking violation rather than a criminal violation.
It all comes down to enforcement of those.
Quality of life.
It doesn't matter if it's under the criminal code or as an ordinance. It's just extremely difficult to enforce those because they're. It's sort of like riding a bicycle on the sidewalk or driving a skateboard on the sidewalk. It happens and it's done, and unless you're there to actually see it when it's happening,
Agreed.
it's hard to.
But it is a
enforce
public
those.
thing. It's not, by definition, it's not something.
Thank you.
The second item is that I would like to thank the governing body, the administrator, and especially the DPW director for their work in coming out with new schedules for the picking up of recycles, and to take care of the days when the normal recycling schedule would say we're not going to pick up. The first time in years, and I probably could say decades, we now have plans to pick up recyclables and skip the missing days, not to skip the holidays. And I think that's a very good effort. I think the combination of putting the new schedule in the bulletin, in the newsletter, and using Code Red will put us on the way to getting people to use the extra days. So I want to thank all the people involved in doing that, and I'm also speaking as the chair of the Environmental Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else care to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll close the public comment section. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barzalato? Councilmember Bash?
Yes.
Councilmember Dayton?
Yes.
Councilmember Grossman?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Public hearing.
Okay, the following ordinance published herewith was first read by title only on February 6, 2018, and posted on the bulletin board of the lobby of the Municipal Center. Ordinance number 18-02, ordinance of the Borough of Tenafly appropriating $214,000 from the Municipal Open Space, Recreation, and Historic Preservation Trust Fund to supplement Section 3F of Bond Ordinance number 17-09, finally adopted on April 20th, 2017.
Public comment on this ordinance? Lauren, you want to read it, please?
Yes. Motion to pass ordinance 18-02 on second and final reading, and is hereby adopted, and notice of same shall be published according to law.
A second, please.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barzalato?
Yes.
Councilmember Bash?
Yes.
Councilmember Dayton?
Yes.
Councilmember Grossman?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
I'd like to say something on this. This is the municipal field funding, so the municipal field has been voted twice,
That's it.
and that's it.
Yes. Thank you.
Now they can go home and watch the TV shows on Tuesday nights.
Yes.
We're very excited, thank you.
Well, I'm very excited also, and looking forward to, I tell you, it was really exciting 12 years ago when we first did this, and matched when we opened up Geisinger Field, and this will be great. Kids will, not just kids, everybody's going to get a kick out of it. Committee reports. Jeff, you have anything?
Nothing, because the planning board didn't meet downtime.
And we do very well when we don't meet. Max, you have anything?
Yes, I think that we had a senior citizen meeting that you all attended to. At that meeting, a report was made on the existing rides, and of course, again, people are ecstatic about the bus from Tenafly. But what was really the scope of that meeting was a new issue, which is called shared housing, which was presented by a lady that does it voluntarily. Works as a volunteer. No, I think that she's not a volunteer.
She works at the Women's Rights Information Center, but this isn't just for women.
Yeah.
Susan Bendy. So used to
Susan Bennett. She used to be a Tenafly resident.
Correct.
Very, very nicely. And basically what it is people that either need extra income or they have a extra room in their houses are matched with people that seek additional a place to live, and since Berrien County is such an expensive proposition, a room in a house, it's much cheaper. And Susan did placed about 12 people last year in the same in houses. She's doing the matching. She's looking at the social profiles, ability to pay, capability of understanding each other, and so. And it's a volunteer program, and we're looking at how and what, if we can do something like that in Tenafly. Of course, we don't want to advertise and but in Tenafly specifically, and for some of the senior people, given the high cost of rent, that might be something that's very good. And that's pretty much all I have.
Yeah, if I may add to that. So, one concern about this program was our zoning laws, but this does not come into conflict with our zoning laws because it's not like you're putting a second family in a single family home. Like Max said, it's kind of like a matchmaking deal, except it's a lot more complex than just going out for a date. And people come to her primarily through word of mouth, I guess. They're either donors or receivers. The donors are the people that have a house, and this plays into our theme of aging in place. Usually it's single people, quite often women, not restricted to women though, that own a house, they're living alone, and it's very difficult from a financial perspective. So they're looking for somebody to come and move in. Susan goes to the extreme of getting a sense of exactly what a person is looking for, and does the same thing with somebody that's looking to move into a house. It's a very, very tough procedure, and as a result, like she said, she's placed, I think, 12 people in the last year, primarily in Englewood. There's absolutely no reason why this can't be done in Tenafly as well. And it's something to keep in mind because, especially as elected officials, we often hear people complain to us that they can no longer afford to live here, they want to stay here, they want to live here. And this is one tool that they may have. Not easy, especially as a senior, it's not easy to share a home with somebody else. But when it works, it does work, and I know of it completely because my mother many years ago shared her home with a student from Fairleigh Dickinson, and when Mom had a house in Teaneck after all of us had moved out. So I know it does work. It doesn't have to be seniors. It doesn't necessarily have to be a man and a woman. It can be two women. It could be two men. So it's very interesting, and frankly, I felt very good about it because it gives us an opportunity to possibly keep a resident here that wants to stay here. So, and I appreciate. I think it was Gloria that brought her in, and if there was interest, we could always have her come and speak to us. But I think I've given you, and Max and I have given you pretty much all that you had to say. Tony, you have anything?
No.
I have a little update from the Chamber of Commerce. I just want to make the announcement that Max's Grill has renovated and is reopened. And Dan, a new restaurant, Da Antonio's, opened where Zest was.
Today.
In town. Oh, today. So if anyone wants some new restaurants or some old fantastic Italian food, please go ahead.
Yeah, his restaurant, he never closed. He just took the sign down and changed the menu. He's an Italian gentleman who's basically had a great deal of experience in Italian cooking. So I know that he feels very comfortable with the menu, as does Max, of course. So I want to give equal opportunity. So now we have two Max's restaurants, very nice looking now, and two almost new restaurants. So thank you.
And the zoning board did not meet this month, so there's no report.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
No, I do not.
Okay, new business. Dan, you want to read it?
I move to introduce and pass on first reading ordinance 1803, set the hearing for March 6th at 8 p.m. or soon thereafter in the Tenafly Municipal Center.
Second, please.
Second.
Ordinance number 1803, an ordinance amending Chapter 7 of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Tenafly entitled Traffic. Councilmember Farzanotto?
Yes.
Councilmember Dash?
Yes.
Councilmember Dayton?
Yes.
Councilmember Grossman?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Thank you. Under the mayor's remarks, I'd like to...
New business?
Oh, go ahead.
Can we add for next meeting,
to add on the agenda for the junior firefighter ordinance has to be revised.
Sure. Okay, that's it. Under Mayor's remarks, I want to commend the council for finishing the open session before 9:30, although I think we should have a stronger goal, 9 o'clock next time. But we did cover a lot of things, and that's good. So, Bill, you want to read the closed session? I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight.
Resolved in compliance with NJSA 10.4-12, Mayor Council going closed executive session, discuss the following matters. This is a personnel matter involving a DPW disciplinary matter. Bills will be taken in the meeting and release of public time. Matters resolved after this closed executive session. Mayor Council reconvene in this Richard D. Wilson Committee room to adjourn this public meeting.
Motion?
So.
Second? It's over. Since we already had our break, let's
No, let's go on.
Let's move on.
I'll see you tomorrow.